Coming up, in his maiden speech in the House of Commons, Nigel Farage, the populist grifter and majority owner of the Reform Party UK Ltd Ponzi scheme, whinged as follows.
This is very much a Remainers Parliament. I suspect in many cases it's really a Rejoiners Parliament.
Farage and his fellow ramshackle renegades of the corrupt and dishonest Leave campaign fear for the future of Brexit. And as well they might, with the Labour Movement for Europe group now finding its voice within the party under the chairmanship of Stella Creasy. Stay tuned. Although I've got several criticisms of the new Labour government, I still say that the two cheeks of the same arse cliché is not entirely accurate. Aside from the immediate ending of the batshit crazy £10 billion Rwanda scheme, the resolution of doctors and rail workers' industrial action, no more speculation about the UK's membership of the European Convention on Human Rights, and the reversal of dogmatic right-wing policies on green energy and culture wars-related topics, more than all that, the obliteration of the Tory party at the 2024 general election meant that the pro-Brexit European Research Group have, to all intents and purposes, been forcibly disbanded. That is a massive win for the whole of Britain. Remember, for Tory governments going right back to John Major's centrist administration back in the 90s, the ERG and its forebears on the hard right of the Tory party were the faction that had most influence on the direction of that party. And yes, I know it's ironic, a so-called European research group that was in no way European spirited, that used not one penny of the public funding it received for research, and was a gang rather than a group. Just a swivel-eyed right-wing crime syndicate. But it was Cameron's sop to this very peculiar fringe group that led to Brexit. He promised them an advisory referendum on leaving the European Union, provided the swivel-eyed element of the party backed him and his manifesto at the 2015 election. And even for another 8 years after the 2016 Brexit vote, the pro-Brexit ERG was so well organised and disciplined. Its obsessive focus on Brexit lent it such influence that it became the tail that was wagging the dog, scaring off the cowardly Cameron and holding each of his four successors as Prime Minister to ransom. But now it's all over. With talismans such as haunted Victorian pencil Jacob Rees-Mogg and the obnoxious Boris fanboy Brendan Clark-Smith booted out of Parliament by the electorate, and many other members throwing in the towel rather than fronting up to defeat in their constituencies, the ERG are scuppered. And in an Alice through the looking glass moment, following this year's general election, we now have the opposite of the ERG in Parliament. And this mirror image within the Labour Party is shaping up to have a huge influence on how the government approaches Europe. Its leader is the brilliant MP for Walthamstow, Stella Creasy, who will be forcing Starmer to sit up and take notice of this pro-European pressure group. The Labour Movement for Europe, LME, boasts more than 120 MPs and peers among its ranks. It's been an official affiliate of the Labour Party for some years, but following the election, it now has an opportunity to directly influence government for the first time. The LME has become more vocal recently, with Creasy rallying the group at the Labour Party conference earlier this week. She knows that Labour's benches are now stuffed with ardent pro-European voices, and as a result, for the first time in 14 years, Britain's Prime Minister will face internal party pressure, not for retrograde, xenophobic, Eurosceptic policies, but rather Starmer is already beginning to feel the pressure to bring the UK back into an ever closer post-Brexit union with the EU. While our unpopular Prime Minister has promised a reset in our relationship with Europe many times, it's becoming obvious that this ain't going to satisfy this newly energised and vocal pro-European group, generally on the socialist left of his party. Looking at the overall mass of the entire new House of Commons, it's clear that the pro-Brexit element is insignificant now. Clear even to Nigel Farage, who told the House of Commons in that same maiden speech I showed a clip from earlier,
"There are more supporters of Brexit in the European Parliament than I sense there are in this Parliament of 2024.
Wonderful stuff. With the polls showing support for Brexit withering in the general population, that's exactly how it should be. But Keir Starmer, as we all know, inexplicably stated before the election that he's ruled out the UK rejoining the EU or the customs union or the single market in his lifetime. But with many of his own MPs backing the Labour movement for Europe now, Starmer's going to be pushed into a more decisive action plan to dismantle Brexit. The major obstacle the LME face is the sheer size of the Labour government's majority. Realistically, after such a decisive result, at least in terms of seats, Starmer doesn't need to worry about backbench rebellions too much, at least for the foreseeable future. The American news wing of Politico recently quoted one Labour minister as saying, "Have you seen the size of our majority? I don't think number 10 will be concerned." Politico US also quote Charles Grant, director of the Centre for European Reform, warning that if the Prime Minister doesn't come forward with big and bold ideas for improving the relationship with Europe, there will be a lot of annoyance and frustration, and then people will get angry or start criticising. And in Stella Creasy, I think those people have a worthy champion. Her and the Labour movement for Europe are already urging Starmer to act quicker on finalising a defence and security pact with Brussels and on establishing a comprehensive veterinary agreement to reduce red tape and phytosanitation checks for British exports to EU countries. Starmer's already said it's a priority of his to reach deals on mutual recognition of professional qualifications for Britain's services sectors. And the LME will be pushing Starmer to reconsider the EU's proposals on a youth mobility scheme in order to secure many other agreements, especially this one around mutual recognition of professional qualifications. The Labour conference saw an LME rally entitled Resetting the Relationship with Europe, and as well as Stella Creasy, speakers included other Labour MPs like Emily Thornberry, Nick Thomas-Simons and Norshaba Khan, alongside GMB union boss Andy Prendergast. As you can see, a large number of Labour MPs are already part of this pressure group, and its numbers are growing. Their aim is to expose the massive ongoing costs of Brexit, to continue to promote the benefits of a closer partnership with the European Union, and to push for the UK's participation once more in the process of democratic decision-making within the EU, rather than continuing to be a post-Brexit rule-taker outside of it. Their website, labourmovementforeurope.uk, sets out their commitment to seeing the UK's future in Europe secured. And since the election, it does now feel like Farage is right, that Britain's pro-Europeans do have the upper hand in Parliament, and the Brexit that he himself has dubbed a failure, the one that he has more responsibility for than perhaps anyone else on the planet, is doomed. The last word from Stella Creasy. Are we organised? Yes, absolutely. Are we growing? Yes, absolutely. Do we have areas of policy we're working on? Yes, absolutely. Let's hope that the LME can mirror the success of the ERG and that we see an end to Brexit, if not in this Parliament, then in the next.